They say her tears can fall as red gold. That image clings to Freya like a signature. It's the kind of detail people remember in the dark, when grief turns heavy and valuable at the same time. Freya moves through the old stories with a presence you can feel before anyone says her name. Lady, her title means, and in these myths, a title like that is never empty. She belongs first to the Vanir, the gods tied to fertility, prosperity, and the forces that keep a household alive. Her father is Njordr, linked with wealth and the sea's gifts. Her brother is Freya, close to growth and peace. Freya comes from that world carrying something older than courtly charm, a kind of authority that makes people watch their words. The poems and prose from medieval Iceland remember a war between the Vanir and the Aesir. The fighting ends in an agreement that feels sharp-edged and real, an exchange. Hostages, honored guests, living guarantees. Freya crosses into the halls of the Aesir as part of that peace. Imagine the shift. New faces, new rules, old grudges sleeping lightly. Freya steps into Odin's world and becomes impossible to ignore. From this point on, whenever something precious is at stake, her name drifts to the center of the room. Freya brings more than beauty into the Aesir world. The sources connect her with Seiðr, a form of magic that works through hidden currents, desire, luck, fate, the way fear can bend a person's choices. It's the kind of knowledge that makes people uneasy even when they need it. Odin wants it. That alone tells you what Seiðr is worth. The tradition remembers Freya as the great holder of that craft, and as a figure who teaches or shares it. Once the door is opened, the gods can't pretend they don't feel the pull of it. Freya's treasures carry their own gravity. Brísingamen, her necklace, shines in the tradition like a living ember at her throat. In Norse myth, a treasure is never just a pretty thing. It announces status, it invites envy, it becomes a handle other people try to grab. Some strands of the tradition connect wondrous objects like this to dwarves, craftsmen who can make metal seem almost alive. The details shift across tellings, yet the mood stays steady. Brísingamen marks Freya as someone whose power can be seen from across a hall. And when something can be seen, someone will try to take it. Then there's the feather cloak, the one tied to falcon flight. With it, distance collapses, boundaries blur. A person can move through the world with the speed of a thought. This cloak keeps turning up in other people's hands because Freya keeps being the one who owns access. Loki borrows it in more than one story. When a problem slips between worlds, when an answer needs wings, the gods reach toward Freya's tools. Her power sits in the center of their emergencies, whether they admit it openly or not. Most people have heard of Valhalla, Odin's hall, the place where battle-dead warriors gather. The medieval sources widen the map. Freya receives half of those who fall in battle. Her realm is Fólkvangr, her hall Seiðr, spacious and built for many. The tradition doesn't pause to justify it, it simply tells you this is how the world stands. Odin takes his share, Freya takes hers. That single detail changes everything you think you know about her. She isn't hovering at the edge of war, but she has a claim inside its heart. One of the sharpest moments in Freya's story arrives through a crisis the gods can't muscle their way out of. Thor's hammer vanishes, and the gods feel the air go thin without it. Their protection is gone, their power suddenly looks fragile, and panic starts to speak louder than pride. The trail leads to a giant who offers a deal. He'll return the hammer if the gods give him Freya as a bride. That demand lands like a slap. Freya's anger flashes through the scene so strongly that later memory holds onto the image of her jewelry shaking under the force of it. The gods scramble for another path because her answer is clear, so they reach for disguise. Thor goes veiled as the bride, heavy with contained fury. Loki goes beside him, quick-tongued and bright-eyed, spinning excuses fast enough to keep the lie breathing. They enter the giant's hall and sit through a wedding feast that teeters between comedy and menace. The bride eats like a storm. The giant's suspicion rises, but Loki talks it down. And then the hammer is brought in to bless the marriage. It's placed on the bride's lap. Thor's hands close around it. In that instant, the room changes shape. The bargain ends, and the hammer comes home. The giant's hall becomes a place of punishment. When the dust settles, the gods have their defense again, and Freyja's refusal still hangs in the story like a boundary line no one gets to cross. Behind the loud myths runs a quieter thread. Freyja is linked to a partner named Other. The sources keep him partly in shadow, yet they remember what matters. He wanders away, and Freyja searches. She travels far. She looks across strange lands. She carries longing like a burden you can't set down. Her tears, the tradition says, fall as red gold. It's a mythic image that feels simple until you sit with it. Sorrow turning into something precious, and pain made visible as treasure. Scholars debate how to interpret Other and what his name may suggest, including possible links to Odin, though the evidence doesn't force a single conclusion. The emotional truth of the motif remains steady, and Freyja's love is a journey across distance. There is a poem where Loki turns a feast into an attack, insulting the gods one by one. When he reaches Freyja, he uses the oldest weapon in the room, sexual slander. He tries to make desire sound like disgrace. The point isn't whether the insult is true. The point is what the insult is meant to do. It shows how a powerful woman can be targeted in a culture that both values and fears sexuality. Freyja stands at that crossroads, and the poetry remembers the tension. When Scandinavia converts to Christianity, the old gods lose their public temples, yet they keep living in memory. Freyja's name and her atmosphere drift into later stories in different shapes, sometimes clear, sometimes blurred into new figures. In modern times, she returns again through art and new spiritual movements, each era pulling a slightly different Freyja forward. Freyja's surviving stories speak about longing, power, wealth, fate, and the fierce dignity of refusing to be traded. From the medieval texts, Freyja stands clearly as a Vanir goddess tied to Njordr and Freyja. She is strongly linked to Seiðr. She receives half of the battle dead in Fólkvangr. She carries famous treasures, including a feather cloak. She appears in major episodes where her body becomes a bargaining chip, and her will forces the world to adjust. Archaeology and place names suggest the wide importance of Vanir-like fertility and prosperity gods in Scandinavia, though material evidence rarely comes with a label that says, "This is Freyja." Scholarship continues to debate overlaps among goddess traditions, including the complex relationship between Freyja and Frigg. The cleanest way to hold it all is to keep the lines visible, a strong medieval core surrounded by interpretation. And if you want one image to close on, keep this. Freyja walking forward with a falcon cloak in her keeping, a hall wide enough for half the slain, and tears that fall as gold when the world gives her distance.